Now, you've heard a pretty good discussion of trustees, receptive trustees, being able to do things and working it from that end of the spectrum, of the community spectrum. Now we have those who are the parents who are getting up there and speaking and holding those conferences and doing all the kind of things that motivate the trustees. So I'd like each one to give a short statement of which district you're in and what kind of motivating things that you've been doing. That's the short part, because then I ask you the hard question.
So my name's Scott Davison. I'm in the Carlsbad Unified School District up in North County, San Diego. I'm a pandemic parent. I moved to a nice suburban school district and thought I was in a great school district until our schools didn't reopen in fall of 2020. And that's when I got involved. I have a biomedical science background and I had studied pandemics, and I knew we weren't supposed to close schools during pandemics. So I started to get activated with the parent group that was already pretty motivated to reopen schools. And as an attorney, the first thing I said is, why don't we just sue them? And so everybody's like, no, we don't want to do anything crazy. And so, 3 months later, after trying to negotiate with our school board / union, because they were captured by the union, we finally decided to sue them. So we decided to sue our school district, and then within a month, our school district had ran to the state and ran to Governor Newsom and said, hey, if they sue us, all the schools are going to have to reopen. So Gavin Newsom changed the rules for everybody, kept all the schools closed in January 2021, and we had to sue the state instead. So there's a bunch of parents in this room that we all got together, and then as the parent association, we sued Gavin Newsom, and we won, and we got an injunction. So that's how we reopened our schools and got our schools reopened. So that's how I got involved. And then once I realized how corrupt our public schools were, I realized we can't just stop. It's like we have to keep fighting. We have to keep exposing how our schools have been captured by the unions, by these associations that, are just pushing these progressive policies, and they aren't looking out for our kids. So I ran for school board last year, and I lost. But the only thing I did right is on the second to last day before the filing date came up, I recruited a mom who I'd never met, and I drove her down to the registrar's office, and I forced her to run for school board in the district next to me, and she won. And so then she won and actually flipped our school board out of union control. So just like, we're talking earlier with Frank, is, hey, I lost, but now we have the opportunity to really make a difference. Now we have an opportunity to build a coalition and really keep working to really help get our parents activated. And I'll talk later about all the different things that are happening in our school district and things we're still working on, because it's going to be a long fight and we got to be patient. But that's how I got involved.
I'm exhausted just listening to that. Well done. Jim Fabsizk. I'm a retired Navy helicopter pilot, but more importantly, I'm a father of 5. I'm in Coronado, and I'm proud to say I'm one of the co-founders of the Coronado, We the Parents Coronado, and I've got my friend Ansana in the back as one of the co-founders as well. How did I get involved? I've got a special needs daughter who's now 31 years old, and if you're out there and you have a special needs child, I always like to say my least favorite 4-letter word is the word IEP. So we suffered many times, many knife fights and IEPs, and I watched my wife suffer. And at some point, we high-fived each other, and she's like, you got it now. And so in Coronado, we had an incident you may have heard of called Tortilla Gate. I'll never look at tortillas again the same way. No, I didn't bring any today, and I never will. But we have done a lot of things. We've accomplished a lot of things. I feel like sometimes we feel like the party of no, we're not going to do this, right? We've got an equity committee banished from Coronado. We got our board to tear up the letter condemning our kids as racist, classist, and colorless. I didn't even know what they meant at the time. Got the pledge back in our schools. The Pledge of Allegiance. You imagine that there's not a single high school, there wasn't a single kid in a high school who had ever said the Pledge of Allegiance before we became involved. And so I'm proud to serve my country still, even in this capacity. So thanks.
My name is Hong. I'm an engineer and who never wanted to speak in public. And here I am. The reason we started, our journey began with a concern for the safety and the well-being of the Asian community. Due to we had a former superintendent who thinks good grades equal to their social economic background. And the Chinese equals to affluence. So that is very stunning, and then we need to make a change. So, and then when we try to make that change, we realize we have to have an organization to make the change impactful and sustaining. So that's why we are here. Thank you.
My journey started beginning of the 1990s. I was one of the parents in San Diego County who sued our school districts and the Department of Education for the class test, if any of you remember that. That was the assessment of outcome-based education. And so because of those lawsuits, they dropped the class test and also redesigned the outcome-based education, which is the forerunner of DEI. Also, too, after that, I served on the school board for 24 years. I entered this first thing as a parent, and then I was on the school board. I was a grandmother, and that's great to have, grandparents on school boards because we don't have any allegiance to anything or anybody. They can do whatever, and we're there for the kids. So I did serve 24 years, and I served with 2 traditional superintendents, and they were ethical and they had integrity. That was the good old days. My last 4 years just was a pits. That's when CTR and DEI was introduced. Also, social emotional learning and sex education was hijacked. I was district out and kept my nose out of the district. But then I heard about ethnic studies, and I thought, oh, how awful that sounds. Definitely not going to be in my district. Well, then I read the superintendent there brought it to our district. I thought, okay, well, let me just check it out. So I asked for the course, and it took a while because they didn't know who I was. So I finally got the course, and I gave it to my team. We're called Rebels in the Park, and I gave it to my team, and we looked through it, and we were appalled. Again, my generation, Angela Davis, the Black Panthers, the Weatherman Underground, those were all our current events. So we knew about them, and they portrayed these people as activists who fought against racism and inequity. And so they were victims due to their color, race, culture, and gender. Oh my gosh, so we all flipped out. And so we started reporting to the boards and making presentations. So we did that for about a school year. And then finally the school district reached out and said, okay, we'll get you a district advisory committee. So we did have one win there. And when I always talked about make it our own ethnic studies. The one that we had was not our own. It was San Francisco, it was Oakland, that's where they got it from. But Oceanside, luckily, we're so diverse and such a great little community. We have it all. Most of our kids are half, a quarter, an eighth. I mean, it's all over the place. So we have a great community. So finally that we are now, we've been about a year doing it, getting it together, trying to make it our own. So we'll see what it comes out this year that we'll find out. And then again, maybe our Rebels will continue our 3-year journey tackling the school board. Thank you.
My name is Lenice. I'm a Poway Unified parent of 2 children. I currently have 2 high school children in the district. I've always been an active volunteer in the school. I have been the classroom volunteer. I do PTA, yearbook. I did yearbook for 2.5 years. So I literally, for 2.5 years, well, more than 2.5 years being a classroom volunteer, I literally watched children grow from kindergarten all the way up through my camera. So when the lockdown happened, and I was a volunteer more at the school site level. When the lockdown happened, and I was watching my children struggle with the online learning, I started noticing things coming from the district. I noticed political emails coming from teachers, from superintendents, on issues that my children were not learning about. They weren't topics that they were learning about in school. The George Floyd incident, the hate incidents that were happening in New York. I watched my daughter watch a video from Dr. Fauci giving her advice on COVID and vaccines. Dr. Fauci is not my daughter's doctor. So that was a problem for me. So I started asking a lot of questions. I started looking at watching the board meetings online, and I ended up having more questions than answered. I noticed that it seemed that the board had a lack of information. So I started emailing. I was not getting any responses. Every response that I did get was a kick the can down the road response, like, oh, we'll reach out to the district members, we'll get back to you, no responses. And then over the course of time, as I've been involved, I've noticed there's been a lot more parent shutout. Parents' speaking time has been reduced from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. Only certain members of the public were allowed in on board meetings. So I started to get angry. I've heard a lot of people speak about being angry. I no longer felt that my children were safe, and not in the sense that I'm sure that if they were choking on food, that there would be, phone calls and first response and action happening. But I felt like what information that they were given, that they were no longer safe, that it was not education they were receiving, it was more indoctrination. So I started coming to more board meetings. I get ignored by the board a lot, but I continue to go, and we are a growing community, parents that are continuously pushing back. I guess we'll get back more into that, but that's who I am and how I got started asking questions.
Thank you. I would mention Lenice is up at the Poway Unified School District, where, disclosure, that's where I live too. Okay, what I'd like you to do at this point is pick one particular success, and of course you define success, which might be perceived as not quite success, but what you feel like you've done, and give us a deeper sense of what it took in order to achieve what you did.
Yeah, and so I can't just pick out one. I have to summarize it all because it works together. But in the past 8 months since our board flipped, we had one minor success, which was our superintendent tried to sneak in an ethnic studies class on the consent calendar, which, if you know board politics and procedures, that means they tried to get something approved without the board really paying attention to it, right? So they tried to sneak in an ethnic studies course filled with critical race theory concepts. And we caught it, right? And so we exposed that the superintendent and his staff were basically trying to shove this through, and our board reacted to it, right? So our board rejected that course. They had to go back and redo it. And then they eventually approved it, with still problematic, but at least we brought some awareness to the problem, right? And so then all of a sudden people started to notice, hey, what's going on with our school district? And so then all of a sudden, 2 months later, we had a DEI plan that we'd been debating, and that came up. And so through actions that weren't even my own, it became a huge controversy in our school district, and we used it to our advantage. We used that controversy. We tried to control the narrative with the media. We sent out press releases. We used social media. We did email blasts. And so long story short, we actually lost on the DEI plan, but in the process, we've gained hundreds and hundreds of parents and 4 different churches in our community that are now actively engaged with what's going on in our school district. And so that's something that, what we've really noticed is you don't have to win every battle. You're probably going to lose a lot. Like if you're on a board like ours, where, we actually flipped it out of union control, but we still have a board that listens to the superintendent, that believes the superintendent has our best interests in mind when he doesn't. So, we got to work on those little by little. So that's kind of my, best summary of the successes we've had, is we have success even when we fail. So don't get discouraged if you lose a vote, if you get up in front of your board and they ignore you like mine always does. And then the last thing I'll say is think big picture. So I ran for school board, and my primary campaign message was getting rid of conflicts of interest, because my opponent works for the teachers union, right? So she sits on the school board and she works for the California Teachers Association and votes on the raises for the union, right? So I used most of my campaign to message that conflict of interest, and it brought a lot of awareness to that issue. And so in bringing awareness to that issue, the next step is to file a lawsuit to basically kick off this board member and say that she shouldn't be on the board. And if you win a lawsuit like that, it kicks every board member in the state off of the board who works for the teachers union. And there's probably 1,000, right? So think bigger picture. And the last thing we're doing, people have talked a few minutes ago just about all the issues with gender ideology and some of the bills that we've tried to get passed. We can't get them past our majority Democratic legislature. So all of our same coalition of parents that help with school reopening, right now we're drafting 3 different ballot propositions to try and get on the ballot for November 24, to notify parents about what's going on with their kids with gender ideology and mental health, to protect girls in women's sports and make sure they're only competing against other girls, and to protect students or protect kids from medicalization from these, irreversible gender procedures. So that's like, Protect Kids CA, if you want to go check out our website. We're just now getting started. So that's, think bigger picture, is don't necessarily think, a lot of politics is local, but there's also things you can do at the state level as well. And so we're going to keep fighting, on all these different issues locally and at the state and even at the national level.
So in Coronado, we refuse to be ignored. I'll say that first. Who here has heard of the program No Place for Hate? Who here has successfully gotten rid of No Place for Hate from your school district? Well, Ann has her hand up, and I have mine as well. I'd say that's been our biggest success. At first, I saw the banner in front of our elementary school. We only have 4 schools in our district. And I saw the banner and really didn't think much of it. No Place for Hate, great, No Place for Hate. And then a good friend of mine said, hey, Jim, if they had a sign up there and it said no place for teenage pregnancy, what would you think? And I'd say we'd have a pretty big teenage pregnancy problem. And so we took that approach. What is the hate problem in our district? And as we kept asking the questions, where is the data that supports your analysis? Never came across it. As part of that, Stuart, I don't know if Stuart's here, crossed paths with Stuart and Frank, and found out that the Anti-Defamation League was behind this and that they were very successful in implementing it throughout. We did our research on the Anti-Defamation League, and the real key was our research. We eventually found the No Place for Hate handbook, and on the handbook it said that kids must move from kindness to activism. And then it defined racism. Racism was only a one-way thing. Whites are racist against all others. And so once we were able to walk through that process of getting people behind us, not only were we able to have it removed from our district, we were able to disband the equity committee at that time as well. Because for us, those two were tied together. We couldn't have done that with a lot of people who were dedicated. We meet every single week. We met every single week. We still meet every single week, and we show up. And I think that's been our big success. So thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also hard for me to just pick one success. I think that we have multiple success in a sense, but they are all related. So we started with the former superintendent who said Chinese students, they had a good grades because they are rich. Because so it disheartens us because it undermines our children's hard work and achievements. And it just, it's offensive and it's unjust. So we started from there, and while we try to get rid of the former superintendent, we found it's evident we have to continue, and we have to have our own voice to be heard. That means we have to have our trustee to be in the school board. So we started a rally for Fan Anderson, who actually eventually become the first Asian school board members in San Diego County. So that was also a big victory for us in the environment that it was thought as mission impossible to win for an Asian background candidate to win against the incumbent who is rich, who has a huge influence in the local community. But we did it because we had a group of volunteers who just go door to door, and we went over every door in the 20,000 voters, and we work hard to educate the voters to understand how important it is to have an independent trustee instead of a union trustee. So I think a lot of people get educated to understand. And then we also try to motivate people to vote because we realize how like the turnover vote are so low. Usually it's just 25% of people would vote. So motivate the voters is the key. Motivate the voters with the same thinking is the key to win. And then the other thing is about when we realize the damage of the DEI to our school system. As immigrants from China, we understand the damage of Chinese Revolution, how damage it is to the society. So we realize that's basically parallel to what is promoting here as part of the DEI ideology. So that is the main reason to also the main reason we want to form that organization, to try to defend for our kids. We don't want our kids to be under such influence. So yeah, I think overall, in summary, the biggest victory, I think for us is actually we have gathered a group of committed parents who are awake now and understand the importance to fight together and then protect our kids. Yeah.
Our success was informing our community, our parents, those parents that won't even step into the boardroom at all. They won't even go there. They're asking and they're depending on us to do their work for them, even though we would like them to join us. Also, the teachers and the classified, the certificated at our school district come to me and just know what a mess our school district is. And they're grateful that somebody is saying something about anything that needs to be done. One of our projects, I call it the Oceanside Porn Project. And we read around 12 books in 3 months, January, February, and March. And it was about a total of 3 books like Genderqueer, Crank, Funhouse, All American Boys, Queer, the Ultimate LGBT Guide for Twins. And we had pictures there. Again, my rebels, they were there. They just hung tough, and they had pictures, the graphic pictures that were in the books. We didn't make anything up. We showed those to the board. The cameras, of course, they blacked it out. Also read excerpts from those books, actually. Okay, so they did quite the job. They also went to the extent they went to the city council and they read books to the city council. And again, just kind of, they get this kind of a glaze on them. So also the district had wanted us to write the complaint form. So we're doing that at this time. And of course, we've already got one rejected complaint about genderqueer, saying because of policy, because of ed code, because of laws, we just got to stay there. That's not right. That's just a big cover up. Meanwhile, our school board just sits there with blank states. I don't know if there's still one in our school board member that's been here today visiting. But you might want to ask her how come they just sit there and have not made a comment to us or reached out to any of us about that. They all make the superintendent do that. And as we know, school board members are supposed to be all about running the district, not the superintendent. So that needs to be rectified in our area. Also, too, the district were prompted to write up an OUSD book challenge process. So they were all notified if they had these kind of people coming, challenging books, that this is how they were supposed to go along the stages. The bottom line in the back page was that administrators or principals were not supposed to remove any books from the shelf. The orders from the superintendent. And at the second meeting, we had about 120 people there. And the one side, as a matter of fact, our executive director put an all call on his media page to the LGBT community throughout San Diego County. But likewise, the faith-based community heard about this and also attended the board meeting. So we had about 120 at that board meeting. Of course, one side calling us haters and Nazis, and the other side quoting scriptures and calling love to all. Neither side acknowledging the books that we were reading or the books that we had read. And of course, the school board just sat there like they were deaf and dumb. So in order to do that paper trail, we are continue submitting our complaint forms and getting, of course, either no response or the books are going to stay there. And that's what we expected. And CFER has been great as far as helping us with that process and stepping us through. So we're doing that. And we're going to keep going. And I just want to thank our Rebels in the Park that have done a great job and great support, community members and some parents. So I want to thank them all.
Unfortunately, in Poway Unified, we have not been successful in removing No Place for Hate. We have not been successful in removing the porn from the schools yet. But there are some things that we have to be proud of. We are amazing volunteers. And thanks to Frank. Frank's amazing. We have in our community created a database. It's a website that is a continuous outreach to our community. We've noticed in our experience in the last 3 years that it is very difficult to stay organized and current on school board issues. It's difficult as a school board member, I imagine also when that is your focus. So I'm a data person. So we started collecting that data and we put it all on the website. So parents now have another way to receive information than just from the district. And this website the purpose for it is to provide information. It is to encourage community service and action. We want transparency and accountability, and you can't tell someone, I've learned, that something is bad, right, Joe? You have to show them that it is bad. And so we are putting the ketchup in front of them in the refrigerator. And if they would like to know, currently some of the things that we have on our website, we talk about finances, we talk about curriculum. And in the next coming, very shortly, we will have a library book database where parents, instead of show me, we can say, go to our website, you can look for yourself, click on your school, and I will tell you what books are in your school. Because the school board members, they don't listen to us anymore. They scroll on their phones. We are a nuisance. They are reducing time limits on speaking. So we cannot do it on our own. We need more people involved and parents. If you got to see it to believe it, just go to our website. We are hoping that this information the knowledge will remove fear from parents, that they will get as upset as we are and start coming to the school board meetings, start writing, doing all those things that those school board members were saying earlier. Because knowledge is power, right? Some of the things that I do believe that we have had an influence on is our Equity Advisory Committee director only lasted about 1.5 years. And our prior Associate Superintendent of Learning Support Services, the one who had worked very hard over the last 5 years to bring DEI into our school, she just retired. And so I would like to believe that the pressure that they have been receiving over the last few years is making a difference. So we have not been able to get the porn out. It's definitely still there. It is district approved porn. But this website, we're hoping that we connect with other people. We inform not just parents, but that it's a tool that school board members can go to, that they can keep current on all the issues. And then we would also like to advocate for change. I have personally done the reconsiderations for the library books, and I have on my own time reviewed board policies. I would like the school board members to stop. Well, I guess we're going to get into that next question. I'll wait on that. But I think our most, the positive example of success is the website and continuing to inform the community.
Okay, one last question, and we'll open it up to some Q&A. This last one is that we heard on the last panel what the trustees who were here, what they expected from parents and community members to kind of ask of them. Now we're going to turn it around and imagine your ideal trustee, if such exists, and what would your conversation be with that trustee to get them to come around to your point of view?
Yeah, and so I'll say the number one thing for me is I expect you to be a parent. Now, you don't actually have to be a parent. If you want to at least pretend to be a parent, that's fine. But I want you to pretend that you're a parent and you have a kid in school. Because what we've noticed is that the biggest divide on school boards is the people that have been on these boards for, a decade, maybe more, and they don't have kids in school anymore, and they don't really pay attention. They show up to a board meeting and they just rubber stamp whatever the superintendent puts in front of them. They don't go meet with principals. They don't talk to parents about what's going on in their schools. So what I really mean is I expect you to be informed and be a resource for information about what's going on in our schools, because the board members are the only ones that have that inside access. We get the secret tips from the teachers and from the, students that, tell us what's being taught, but the board members are the ones who can get the official explanation, right? And they can put in an actual request instead of me putting in a Public Records Act request and waiting 6 months. So I expect you to be informed and know what's going on in our schools. And then I also, expect you to make evidence-based decisions. So that was very apparent in our DEI vote, right? We had hundreds of people come and scream and yell, and then we had hundreds of people come and talk about where's the evidence for DEI, and our board caved to the emotional, pleas from these students and from these activists that, talked about all these horrible things that were happening, and some of them were made up, right? And so, but we had presented evidence, and our board went with the emotion. And so what I really want is for, board members to understand, you're going to get a lot of emotional, angry responses and emails, but you need to focus on the evidence. And then as far as what I can provide you is what's in this room, right? Is we have a massive amount of resources and we're getting better. We have CFER, we have Cal Policy Center, we have Transparent California, we have all of these other groups that have already been in existence and already have been developing all these resources. And so we can take those resources and bring them down to the local level. Frank came and spoke at our school board meeting and talked about, the ethnic studies program. Wenwan and them, they put a memo, almost like a legal memo together explaining ethnic studies and all the pros and cons and what our school board needed to look at. So we've had amazing, use of these resources that CFER and these other groups can put together that we can translate down to the local level and advocate for at a specific level. So that's what I think we would offer is we'll offer support. We'll have, a couple dozen or 100 parents, however you want to show up. And provide you with the information you need to make those evidence-based decisions. So yeah, that's what I would say.
So number one suggestion for me is shorten the length of the school board meetings. My God, 5 or 6 hours. Parents have to work. Parents have to provide for their families. I can't tell you how many times I had to leave in the middle of a school board meeting because it just droned on and on. To your point earlier, when I'm talking to a school board meeting or to the trustees, you better give me your attention. I stop in the middle when I'm talking if they're not looking at me. And so I find that they're very disrespectful of what happens to you. That pisses me off, just hearing you say that. And I thought about, while you're talking about that, is while they do that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to bring out my cell phone. I'm going to video them until they look at me. And then I'm going to run it when it's time for school board elections. So anyway, let me bring it back down a minute. So I wrote a couple things down here. I expect them to lead and do their homework. I find often, and maybe you guys find the same, is I feel sometimes we're doing more homework than the trustees are doing. Andrews, I don't know if he's still here. I talked to him when I was thinking about running for school board, and he told me he'd prepare 30 hours a month for a school board meeting is the minimum. And so that's my expectations for school board members. Oftentimes you'll find yourself in a position where you know more than they do, and you're sitting there, you're so frustrated because they don't know the issue. And it's clear that they don't know the issue. And in terms of leading, we talked about local control a couple times today. What I find on this current school board -1 is we're just going to do what Sacramento tells us to do. And I find that we don't need trustees if that's what they're going to do, right? We just don't need you at all. So figure out what are your requirements, and then figure out what your priorities are. That was my first thing that I spoke to in this school board. I need to know what are your requirements and what are your priorities, because I need to understand who you are as a board, and they get to provide that. We keep going, issue to issue, or fire to fire, and I hope they're going to get better with that. I think that's the main ones. In the end, I'm looking for you to listen and to lead and not to defer. And so we're getting better in our district, but we got a long way to go. Thanks.
Okay, so my perspective is I would appreciate our trustee I know you have been great and be brave, stand up, and then I want you to hold and then continue to be brave. When I say to be brave, I think I really mean it. You need to be brave enough to stand against the people who are trying to push DEI. And that takes courage, because DEI is under the disguise of inclusive. They are trying to lowering the academic standard, and they are trying to portray an illusion of improved outcome without addressing the individual needs of the student. And that's appealing to a lot of people who are not educated. So being brave to stand up and then to speak for the students' real needs. So I would appreciate that. And then continue to maintain the high standards in reading, writing, science, and the math, those core curriculums. And ensure transparency in curriculum and the finances. So those are what I wanted to see. I think our school district in San Diego, the independent trustee, they have been doing that, and I'm really proud of them. And then also the other thing is continue to be independent. So what we can offer, and I think we can offer the support you need. So by participating in board meetings, continue to contribute as a parent perspective to enrich your decision making, and so that the trustees are attuned to the real needs of our community and the students. And then we will also try to provide a platform to advocate for merit-based education and the equal opportunities for all students. So trustees, you have us as your backup. We stand behind you.
Of course, expectations, I agree with all of them. Our school board members need to be there for us. They need to listen. But I have found out that when our new board members had been elected, they went to CSBA, they did all that, but I mean, they were like a deer in the headlights. So I've just been sitting down with a couple of school board members, the newly elected ones, just going through the agenda. And that is mind-blowing, because they know all this stuff, or they're listening to all this stuff, but what about the agenda? So we've been going through that agenda. I tell them to look at this and suggest what items need to be looked at, questioned, researched. And also, and that's a lot, to have to deal with now it's just only once a month, but also routine items like the warrant list. There's monies that are handling there that you don't see anything anywhere else. Also the staffing, the change in staffing, the different positions, obviously the budget too, which is so overwhelming. I don't even get that now. But again, to kind of be learning, line upon line and precept upon precept, so they can be that board member that understands not only parents, but understands the system. And so I found that they're doing really, really well. And to know that, hey, they're the board member, they're the boss. not the superintendent. If you're going to want to pull an item from the consent calendar, by all means, pull it and let's talk about it. Just because it's under consent, it doesn't mean it has to be done. Or is there something that you're not comfortable with? Hey, I would like to delay it. And the president has the power to do that. Okay, she doesn't have to ask for a vote, but I know they do that in our district. So that's just something that I have found that is helpful to school board members, because there just is so much that they have to learn and deal with and try and turn that battleship around. Thank you.
One of the things that has come out as that is a flag for me, but what do I expect from a school board member? The school board members, the first thing they do is they swear to support and defend the Constitution. First thing they do in December. I expect that from my school board members. I expect them to secure accountability within the district, to support education frameworks that will prepare students for the workforce. And I expect them to respond to the beliefs, concerns, and values of the community that they reside. I believe school board members should be engaging with the community, not just during election season. I believe that that they should be responding to the public at forums and safety summits. I can't tell you how many school events I've been to where those school board members, they recognize me, they know me, and they avoid me like the plague. I'm a nice person. They should be talking to me. I believe that school board members should be crafting policy recommendations in accordance to the community values instead of automatically accepting advocacy efforts from organizations like CSBA. What Emily's talking about with the consent calendar, we've had several of those incidences in PUSD where policy changes are being snuck through in the consent calendar. So it's very important that you have a group of people that are dissecting that agenda every single month. I don't want to hear from school board members when you reach out to them that that's not what I was told. And I will just reach out to the district and we'll have them get back to you. That doesn't work. I don't want to hear that anymore from school board members. I want them to come to the table with questions, comments, discussions, and if they need help, I will provide that for them. We have a growing community that has all kinds of data that we're providing. We will, if you're not sure on an issue, we will get you current on that issue. If you need a parent to speak on an item before the consent calendar, we will provide those parents for you. So we want to support school board members. We don't want you to be silent and sit on the lines. We want action. They should not be going and giving a board report that just includes, I visited this school, the kids are great, we love them, we're so proud of them, and then there's only 50 more days of school. I don't want to hear that. I want to know, what are you doing to make this district better? And that is currently absolutely, without a doubt, not happening in our school districts right now.
A short bit of context for Poway Unified School District. They've just changed the amount of time that you can speak on an item, and they've reduced it from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. That's the context that Lenice is in. Okay, questions? Okay. Wait, just wait. Speak into the mic.
I'm loud too. 2 quick questions on the agenda. The problem we have in Orange County and Capital Unified School District, the agenda comes out like the day before or the evening before. And if people are working, how do you even prepare for that night? And the second question is, have any of you been successful with adding an item to the agenda?
It should be.
So she's 72 hours prior per Brown Act, I think.
Unless it's emergency.
Unless it's special meeting, yeah.
So I don't think I don't know if that's Brown Act specifically, but They're required 72 hours prior.
The brief agenda, but the supporting documents, they will withhold till the night before.
As far as getting something on the agenda, the real key, and the trustee said earlier, you got to get a second, right? So in a district like ours, where we have 4-1 against, what the real key is to find the +1 to get it on the agenda. Otherwise, we can't get it on the agenda. So you have to be able and be willing to compromise, I think, in some areas to identify that other, in our case at least, that other school board member who will be willing to second it. And if you can get it on the agenda, even if they vote no, now you've got them on the record. And I always thought that was important when they're running for school board. So.
And I'm not, so we're actually just debating this with on a text group with some people in here about putting items on the agenda for a meeting. The board policy we're looking at, we're about to try this. It requires the board to put it on the agenda if it's within the purview of the board. So you don't actually have to have a motion and a second to actually just have it come up as a discussion item. So you should be able to put a discussion item on the agenda. Now, you might not be able to get the board to actually make a motion and then second it and force a vote on it, but at least as a citizen, you should be able to send in a request under, what was it, 9902, whatever we were just discussing. It should be the same policy in every school district. I think you can at least force them to discuss it and put it on there. Now, I'm sure there's variances in how the boards interpret that, but that's our understanding. And we're about to try it. So maybe we'll report back and let people know how it works.
Looks like we have some homework to do.
That's right.
9322 is the board item.
9322 is the board policy.
The bylaw item.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to add, not to have a trick to add, how to add it to the agenda, but it's always good to speak up in the non-agenda item on the item you want to discuss. And then the other thing we find is helpful is always keep a record of their voting record. The board voting record, when it's displayed to educate your voters, it will help them, the voter, to understand what did the union trustee they will vote on the item. So, and also if you keep speaking on the on some item you want to be discussed, they never put on the agenda, that can also be a record. Just keep those records, and then it can be very educational information for the voter. So one example in San Diego we had was we never had a pool in the whole school district. In the past 30 years, the union trustee, they never put it on the agenda because they have the majority, right? So, but that became, that came up again and again, and then people ask for it, they never succeed to put it in the agenda, but that shows to the voter what the trustee would do if they keep voting those kind of trustee.
Another question? Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try to speak loud.
Oh, wait, here comes.
So I'm wondering if any of you are familiar with the Texas situation. Moms for America worked with their legislature to put through a bill saying that the Texas schools curriculum, books, libraries had to be in line with the FCC ruling regarding obscenities and porn. Meaning, if it's not on our TVs and airways during the day, it should be in our schools. Would that be a good idea to sue our state? Do what Texas did. They've already got the playbook.
We've come up on a lot of roadblocks in connection with the porn. Apparently there's different rules in education and it's allowed in California. I do want to say one thing as we're wrapping up. Parents, those of us that are on the front line fighting this, I've heard this several times. We are tired. School board members are tired. I was just talking to Tracy earlier out there in the audience. I'm on my 10th wind. We need, if you cannot step up and join a school site council to be monitoring finances, if you can't be a PTA, ask your your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, ask somebody in your family too, because we need eyes and ears out there. Maybe you don't need to be, voicing your opinion in these meetings, but you can be giving that information to us, to those of us who are willing to stand up and speak out at the board meetings for you, because we do have a lot of teachers that have been reaching out that are way too scared. They do not want to lose their job. They don't want targets on their back. They just want to go to work and go home. So we will speak for you. So it is very important that you get involved in your school community in one way or another. Anybody can join the PTA. You do not have to be a parent. You can be as long as there's a few rules, you pay your dues and you get in a certain amount of time, you can be a part of the PTA. So even if you don't have kids in that school district, so please do something.
I'd like to add the note that there is this process called theater. You can do theater. So for example, Lenice and Rochelle, when they were looking at some of the books in the library that had obviously pornographic images in it, they took them and blew them up, showed them to the board, but when it panned over to the TV cameras, they said, no, we can't show that. That's pornographic. There's a disconnect between board members and reality. So there is that kind of problem that you have, and maybe theater will help a little bit. Is there another question? One more question? Okay, yes.
So Jim, I like your idea. So people can hear you. Sure. Jim, I like your idea of shortening board meetings. I know school board member is an unpaid position in general. I know probably better than anybody in this room, it's close to zero. A little bit of money, but not worth it. So I don't know if I should suggest this, but why not have board meetings twice a month? And cut back, or why not require that board members hold town hall meetings in their districts so that the people have the opportunity to speak on their issues without having to show up at board meetings? What is that an idea?
I think it's a great idea. What our school district has done is they've had a second meeting, but they closed the second meeting. And so they do, they talk more policy governance, but they don't invite us. So we do bang on the doors. They call it, yeah, they're called something to that effect. I forgot, maybe Ann, you remember the exact name of it, but it's like I call it the no parents meeting. But no, reasonable idea.
Okay, then. So it looks like everybody's still awake. Let's, thank our panelists.